My name's Jim Charneski. I'm a field researcher for Bigfoot Field Research Organization, and I live in Western North Carolina. I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, and as a kid growing up, every week or two there was always something in the back of the newspaper about somebody seeing something running through the fields, and I always thought it'd be interesting to hunt for Bigfoot. And about 12 years ago, I thought, well, while I'm still young enough to get out in the woods and do it, I'd better get started. And at that time, I found the BFRO, and they were one of the few organizations that were interested in true research at that time. And I started going on trips with them, and it took me about 3 years until I was able to become an investigator with them. Quite a few. There's several areas around here that have multiple sightings each year. It's not quite as heavy density as other parts of the state, but basically along the Tennessee-North Carolina border, we get a lot of reports on down towards the South Carolina border. I have a sneaking suspicion from my research that they tend to migrate up here to the higher elevations in the hottest part of the summer, and then it's a short day or two walk to get down off the mountain into South Carolina or parts of Tennessee that would have a little milder winter than up here in the mountains. Well, for the last hundreds of years or longer, people have been seeing something, and I don't think it's all misidentifications and hoaxes. I think there's usually a little bit of credibility for each of the lore and folk tales from many different cultures. I would have to think that over the centuries that people are seeing something, and they're describing what they see to the best of their ability at the time. So I give some credence to the folklore and other stories from Native Americans and the early settlers. I think probably pretty good, especially here in Western North Carolina. From the late 1800s on up to the 20s and 30s, a lot of the family farms and areas here had their own little mines. This is one of the richest gemstone and mineral areas on the East Coast. So this was a very pretty depressed financial area, but any of the family farms, if somebody came to town and said, if you've got this rock on your farm, you dig it up, I'll give you money, they did it. And a lot of the older family farms that I've visited had little mines, and little, I'm meaning sometimes they were just barely big enough to climb into, just a depression dug back into the mountain. Whether it's for gemstones or uranium or any of the other minerals, I think they're opportunists. If they find a little cave or nook that they can climb into for shelter and be safe sleeping, I think they'd use it. I won't say it's not possible. I would probably have to go through a long list of other possibilities before I would come to thinking of it as a Bigfoot case, unless there is evidence found immediately that would suggest that. I know when the 411 books came out, you know, there are a lot of people disappearing in wilderness areas and state parks and national forest. But there's so many reasons that somebody could disappear and not be found in these remote areas. I would like to think that they're not all Bigfoot related, just accidents for the most part, or people going in and getting themselves stuck in an area without the training or expertise to get themselves out of it. But some of them might possibly be Bigfoot related or other animal related. It's an interesting story. Most of the research that I've done so far is just a rehash of what was on the local news and media. I haven't found anything yet where anyone interviewed the boy in any great detail. It's possible, I think, that it may have been a bear, but also because of his age and size, I'm not sure. You know, none of the media reports suggested anything other than a bear. And the boy's definition or description, he said it was a bear. I think he'd have to be questioned by someone with a little experience to find out, was this really a bear or just something big and dark and hairy? That would be difficult with a young boy that's, you know, 2.5, 3 years old, to get much great detail. But there have been reports around the world where other animals have helped humans that are in trouble. Anywhere from elk and dolphins, other larger mammals. So I won't say it's completely out of the realm, but it's something that I think would warrant, you know, some more investigation. But I couldn't immediately jump to the Bigfoot conclusion without something pointing in that direction. It's another interesting little tidbit. I've seen some very impressive tree twist that whatever did it had to have just immense strength. You know, branches 4 or 5, almost 6 inches in diameter, you know, twisted probably 25, 30 times to the point that, you know, they splintered and fractured like you and I would twist a dandelion. What can do that in the woods, I think, is very few and far between. A bear certainly can't do that. They may have the strength, but they don't have the dexterity in their paws or hands to do something like that. Some of the ones that I've seen, I don't know a human alive that is that strong. Some of the structures I kind of have to question until they're thoroughly researched. If there's a windstorm and branches fall and get tangled up, okay, you can say that's natural. If you find a structure that is made out of wood and there's no trees nearby out of that wood, meaning that the limbs and the wood had to be moved physically, it's like, all right, that adds a little more credibility to it. On the other hand, with the number of people doing bushcraft things and hoaxes out in the woods, just because a limb is moved several hundred yards or further doesn't necessarily mean it's a Bigfoot, but each one of those, I think, has to be investigated carefully on a per case basis. That was a very interesting one. It was a little bit smaller than some of the other ones that I've seen, but that was still enough girth and size to the tree that it took considerable force to do it. You seem to have done a good job of researching the area around it, looking for any other evidence that could have caused it, following up with the dimensions and how it was twisted, which is very good. Also the height, anything that's twisted 6, 7, 8 feet off the ground is going to limit what could do that as well. I don't see somebody carrying a ladder out in the woods to twist something 7 feet off the ground. That would take considerable effort. But if you find branches broken or branches broken along a trail, that it's obvious that something is trying to keep the branches out of their way so that they can move quickly up and down the trail, I'd say, that's a good possibility that you may have found a hunting spot or an area where they're trying to move quickly. I would say do it. You don't have to spend a lot of money to start doing some Bigfoot research. Yeah, all the gadgets and the cameras and recording equipment are nice, but it doesn't take long. If you find somebody that has some experience that can tell you what to look for, what to listen for, an idea of the terrain to go to, it doesn't take long to learn that. And once you do, I think you'll be amazed at how often you do hear things that are out of the norm. Lots of different organizations from state to state that are happy to have new members that will come and ask questions and have them show you what to look for. Number one, don't panic. One of the most difficult things to do in the woods, especially if you're out by yourself late at night, a chipmunk can sound like a bull elephant going through the woods. And your imagination can be the worst part from time to time, because your imagination can run wild before you turn a flashlight on and see what it is. But also get to know the area that you're in, know what normal sounds you should hear there. And if you do have something that seems to be following you in the woods or throwing rocks or pebbles at you, or you hear grunts or whistles or anything like that, relax a little bit, listen to what you're hearing, try and eliminate everything else. And I don't think that unless you corner one or shoot one or injure one, I don't think they're a threat. They're very good at intimidation, and chances are they know you were there before they made themselves known. But if they want you out of an area, they can intimidate you till the hair's standing up on the back of your neck and you'll want to go. But, just be careful. It's better to go with a couple people than one person out wandering around at night by themselves. Have some form of communication. Radios, you can get those fairly cheap. So that even if the other people that are with you are 50 yards away, you can still talk and say, I heard it, it was over to the left, what did you hear? But relax a little bit, pay attention to what your surroundings are, and have fun with it, but be careful. Curiosity, one thing. To think that we're the only hominoid species on the planet is a big jump. All the different cultures that have histories, folklore, stories of the little people on up to giants. I think there's something to it. I think they're just about as curious as we are. If we can find out a little more about them, their habits, behaviors, I think it's worth, just for our background and history, to see what we can learn. And if we can prove that some of the folklore and stories that we've been hearing for centuries are true, that's another little bonus of the world that we live in. I have a couple different occasions. One was over in the eastern part of the state. I was camping and was in a hammock with a tarp shelter over the top of the hammock. And of course, it was a stormy, rainy, wet night. The wind was blowing. I was tied up between two pine trees of decent size. So, as the pine trees moved, it'd wiggle the hammock a little bit. And of course, it was pouring down rain most of the night. And around 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, it wasn't light out yet. Things were still dripping, but something walked up to my hammock. I didn't hear a sound, but right above my head, where the hammock was tied off, something did a karate chop on that rope. And it was enough that with my head sitting on the hammock, that it snapped my head back. So it wasn't like a twig fell on it. Something hit the rope to the hammock. Everything was so wet and squishy and soft that I didn't hear anything leave. The next morning, one of the neighbors who was camping there had their cooler and some other things that were up on a picnic table that had been rifled through. And some things knocked off the table. Whether that was a Bigfoot, I don't know, but it had to be tall enough to reach up to the top of where my hammock rope was. So that was, 5.5, 6 feet off the ground. Another encounter that I had was we got a report from some trout fishermen that had been hiking up to a wild trout stream, and they'd hiked about 5 miles back into the woods and camped there for 2 nights. And the first night they heard something circling their camp. You know, they could hear footsteps, they could hear some snorting. They weren't sure what it was. The second night they heard that again, and then something started throwing rocks and acorns at their tent. They got spooked and headed out and called us, and a group of us investigators headed down there and backpacked into where the fishermen had been. First night there, we didn't hear or see anything. So we decided to move camp. And right above where the trout fishermen had been, at the top of the ridge, there was 3 ridges that joined in one spot. And there was game trails along the tops of those ridges. So we camped at the top where those 3 trails met. And we sat there, and each one looking over the other person's shoulder so they could see down the game trail. And one of the guys said, "Jim, grab your night vision, there's one behind you." And in the time it took for me to reach down, get my night vision, turn, and look at it, it had stepped off the trail behind a very large fallen pine tree. And unfortunately, this was an older Generation 1 night vision, so I couldn't record from it. But I sat there and watched him for probably 6 or 7 minutes. Shoulders about 4 feet wide. I could see him from about the waist up. And he'd stick his head up and shoulders up above the log and watch us. And very slowly sink down behind the log, move to a different spot on the log, and pop his head and body up to watch us from a different angle. And after he did that for the 5 or 6 minutes, we could hear, one of the guys had a bionic ear with us, and we could hear it walking, circling down below us in the ravine. And then it walked on out away from us. The next morning, you could see in the leaf litter on the forest floor where it had walked down the ravine. And then at the bottom of the ravine in some gravel, you know, you could see where something had walked across it. And there was about 14-inch footprints down there. Nothing that we could do a casting of, but it was obvious where something had walked across the gravel. Yeah, I mean, in that area, you know, in South Carolina and Georgia both have very active Bigfoot groups. Mm-hmm. And lots of sightings and activity. You know, down through the DuPont area and on over towards North Carolina and Georgia border. You know, there's some serious woods down there. No, I'm just thrilled that Bigfoot research is increasing worldwide. And it's not just the tabloid stuff that was so popular even 20 years ago. The amount of true research going on is really surprising. And with the BFRO that started in 1995, we've collected a little over 72,000 reported sightings in this country. that we're trying to investigate all of them. People are seeing something. It's not all hoaxes and pranks by your next door neighbor or hunting buddy. So if we can add just a little bit more knowledge, I think that's fabulous.